The regular meeting of the Board of Education. Tonight, we are going to do things a little differently because we have some special guests in the audience. One of the great things that we as board members get to do is to celebrate student success. And tonight, we have the honor of giving out some awards to some of our distinguished Middlebrook and high school students. Those are the Connecticut Association of Board of Education Awards. So Principal Feltz and Associate Principal Shells are going to make those presentations.
Great. So why don't we start with you, Lauren?
So I'm so happy to be here on behalf of the Middlebrook staff, and tonight we're going to celebrate Harrison Forland as our 8th grade yellow team representative for the CABE Student Leader Award. And we're very happy. I have a lot of nice things that your teacher said about you, so pardon me as I read. Harrison's French teacher, Mr. Belenzi, said that Harrison is a compassionate young man who always likes to help, and he cares a lot about his peers. When nominating Harrison for this honor, his teachers described him as unfailingly polite, helpful in class to teachers and to students alike. His science teacher, Debbie Malazzi, commented that Harrison is kind to everyone and makes sure to include everyone when working in groups. This was echoed by other staff members who described Harrison thoughtfully looking to see who doesn't have a partner and offering to work with that student. Mrs. Malazzi also went on to add that he is always enthusiastic and willing to accept any academic challenge. Harrison's leadership traits have been appreciated throughout his 3 years at Middlebrook. His 6th grade reading teacher, Mrs. Geisler, recalled, as a member of the 7 Red team, Harrison represented what it means to be a CABE recipient. Harrison's optimistic attitude is contagious amongst his peers, classmates, and teachers. He's able to make connections with all students, and he was always capable of leading through example. All of these skills he was and is still able to motivate others around him to be successful, a true sign of a genuine leader. Speaking on behalf of the 8 yellow teachers, team leader Allison Rubin said, "We wouldn't be surprised if Harrison becomes the next tech mogul or A-list director or producer. Harrison has taken a computer course at Harvard and likes to dismantle and reboot computers for fun and to challenge himself. He's a member of both Mavens, which is the Middlebrook audiovisual crew, and the TV studio. Last year, Harrison won the Area 9 Cable Council Video Award, and he is competing for a Fox 61 video contest this spring. His dream would be to win a Nobel Prize for engineering and for creating a machine similar to a 3D printer that would be able to make synthetic organs for transplant. Harrison's other great love is his family, and he has several parts of his family here tonight. He values his time with his parents and siblings. In a journal entry, he wrote, "My favorite place is my house, more specifically my room. I know I could have said or done something like California or Las Vegas, but at my house I have all of my siblings so I will not be lonely." Through all of his endeavors and interactions, Harrison shows commitment, care for others, and a willingness to take on challenges, all of which make him an ideal CABE recipient. So congratulations, Harrison. We're very, very proud of you, Harrison Forland.
Harrison, why don't you come up? We're going to come around the table. We'll present you with the certificate. Ms. Feltz, if you want to come up. Family, if you want to snap a photo. Can you take a picture as well? Great. And since Ms. Fingerstein is our board chair, we'll have her present it to you. Okay? And then we'll just take some pictures.
Shaking your hand.
All right. Get used. This is good practice for you.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thanks.
Yeah, Harrison, congratulations. We're really proud of you.
Very well deserved.
Both of our CABE student leaders have their younger siblings here tonight, which I think is just lovely because they show leadership at Middlebrook, and there are lots of younger students following in their footsteps. Our second CABE recipient tonight is Sloan Barker. Come on up, Sloan. In nominating Sloan Barker for this honor, her teachers described her as a kind, compassionate, and involved student from the 8 Green team of Middlebrook School. She is not only a student who reaches to achieve her very best in every class, she is a role model to others within the community. She's an active member of Team Change, a group of concerned students who work with teachers to make all members of the school feel valued and connected. Sloan has been such an outstanding member in that work that she was invited to work with the district team change committee. Sloan has been recognized for her efforts on the anti-bullying committee and is a member of student government. Sloan is a force for fostering positive relationships among the student body. Now, I'm going to interrupt my quote of her teachers to interject that Sloan has orchestrated dozens, if not hundreds, of happy days at Middlebrook this year, and she nearly single-handedly planned granting most of the someday wishes of students and staff alike. Those range from hot chocolate being delivered to class to a police escort to school for a student, and even a chance for a student to conduct the stage band. Sloan is the invisible hand granting wishes and making individuals feel celebrated in so many small ways. So I'll return to your teacher's nomination. Beyond her work within the school, Sloan is active in many sports. She plays hockey and skis. She plays golf and tennis and is on a summer swim team. Sloan is also an accomplished ballet, point, and jazz dancer. In addition to all of these activities, Sloan always has time to be a devoted member of her church, St. Matthew's. Sloan is an all-around delight. She embodies happiness and caring. Sloan's 7th grade team leader, Ms. Beckmore, added her endorsement to Sloan's nomination. Sloan is dedicated to the fair and equal treatment of all. As part of the Upstanders Club, she said that she was not there to learn how to stand up for herself because she feels confident in that. She's there to help others learn how to stand up for themselves. She does that work out of compassion and empathy. Also from Ms. Beckmore, Sloan was a leader in our outdoor classroom last year. Not only was she highly organized, but she was a driving force behind the good work that the club accomplished as they prepared the site for a memorial service last spring. Sloan has all the best characteristics one could hope for in a future leader. Her dean, Dean Kay, said Sloan is eager and thoughtful in all of the work that she does to support team change in the Middlebrook community. She willingly accepts a leadership role and demonstrates a level of responsibility and organization far beyond her years. Sloan truly wants to make Middlebrook a great place for all students, and her commitment shines through everything she does. So on behalf of the Middlebrook staff, we're delighted to honor Sloan as a CABE Scholar Leader.
rec for many years. He's on the indoor track team. He's going to be on the golf team. You're on the golf team?
Nah, I decided not to do that this year.
He didn't want to be on the golf team.
Working.
Which I think shows a certain independence of spirit. He wasn't led where people told him to go. He made a real-time decision and went with it, which speaks again to his leadership, okay? So I think that's a good thing. But he was a coach for youth basketball for a very long time, and he did give back to the community in that way. So I think we see here a young man who's budgeted his time and balanced things, academics, extracurriculars, sports, and just being a nice person, which I think goes a long way. And again, these are things that don't always come through in a transcript. So you, Andrew, we're very proud of you, and you clearly qualify for a CABE Student Leadership Award. Congratulations.
Congratulations to all four of you. Really outstanding accomplishments for you. Okay, now we're going to get back to our regular agenda. Has everyone had a, oh, yeah. Part of your award is that you don't have to stay for the rest of this meeting. So feel free, much as we'd love to have you. Congratulations.
Bye-bye.
Well said.
Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion is approved. At this time, as we do at every meeting, an opportunity for members of the public to come forward and offer any comments. Would anyone like to come forward? Seeing no one, we're going to move to the consent agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the consent agenda?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is approved. The chairman's report, I actually have 3 things that I would like to talk about tonight. The first is a shout out to Mrs. Deck's kindergarten class. This morning I had the pleasure to participate in Miller Read Aloud Day, and I had the honor of meeting these students this morning and reading a great book to them, rock, paper, scissors, excuse me. It was great fun, and I was so impressed by the way that, just their character, their intelligence, their good humor, and they were just great sports. They gave me this great card, and they sang me a song, and I just wanted to share it with everybody. So,
Great.
thank you, and thank you very much to the Miller PTA for putting together that great event, and to the Village Market, who donated all the books. It was a great morning. I know, Debbie, you were there, Dr. Smith, you were there. It was just a wonderful way to start the day. And then the next thing I got to do today, a few years ago, the Board of Education enacted a policy to establish a Hall of Fame as a way to recognize exemplary achievements of our graduates, teachers, and staff members. In enacting this policy, we made it clear that induction into the Wilton Hall of Fame was reserved only for candidates who truly met the policy's high standards and who had distinguished themselves in their chosen field. Hall of Fame membership is a highly coveted honor and is the highest honor attainable through the Wilton Public Schools. At the same time, we recognize the tremendous contributions of our teachers and staff members who, while they might not achieve national or significant peer recognition for their contributions, are nevertheless heroes in the eyes of the Wilton Public Schools. For these qualified candidates, we created a Service with Distinction Award, which will include a plaque installed in that particular teacher's classroom or workspace. The policy establishes a standing committee to review each Hall of Fame nomination. That committee includes 12 people: the superintendent, the Board of Education chairman, the building principals, the PTA presidents, and 2 at-large members of the community. I am honored to be a part of that committee, and we met today to consider nominations for 2018 induction to the Hall of Fame, and I am proud to announce the results of today's meeting and our this year's 4 inductees. Kristine Lilly, 1989 Wilton High School graduate, 3-time member of the U.S. Women's Olympic team, and one of the most successful and decorated female athletes in U.S. history. Army Private First Class Nicholas Medeiros, a 2005 graduate of Wilton High School, who was killed in action while on active duty in Iraq in 2006. Donald Varelli, a 1975 graduate of Wilton High School, who held the esteemed position of Solicitor General during the Obama administration. And John Rhodes, current and soon-to-be retired music teacher in the Wilton Public Schools. John has built a legacy of over 40 years of service that in many ways defines our highly rated music department. Among other things, we have the Wilton Warrior Marching Band and the Jazz Symposium because of John's vision, compassion, and his dedication. This board has been impressed by the passionate outpouring of support from members of our community, including John's colleagues, current and former students, and their parents, who either appeared in person or who wrote to tell us of John's deserving of a special recognition. The Hall of Fame committee couldn't agree more. So we are honored to offer John membership in the Hall of Fame, and we are also honored to award him with our Service of Distinction Award, which will be placed outside of the Little Theater, which of course was his second home. You'll be hearing more about these deserving individuals in the coming days. We will officially conduct them into the Hall of Fame at a ceremony in June. My sincerest congratulations to these inductees and their families. And again, induction into the Hall of Fame is the biggest honor that Wilton Public Schools can bestow on an individual to commemorate their service. So that was another great thing that happened today. So, truly great to commemorate these people. And my third thing isn't nearly as fun as those two, and that's a reminder of the town meeting, which is next Tuesday night, May 1st at 7:30 in the Clune Center. We will present our budget, and that's when voting starts. And I urge everyone to attend the meeting and cast your vote. And if you can't make it, then to please get down to the Clune Center on Saturday to vote. Thank you. Superintendent, so top that.
No topping that. Although we had some breaking news at the start of the meeting. So a number of our students from the high school are on their way back now from the Colt World Language Competition. And in transit, Laura learned that 2 of our students, Michael Wallace and Nia McCarthy, each earned gold medals. Michael in Ancient Greek in level 5 and 6, and Nia, I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that name right. You're no help on that.
I'm sorry.
Right. For Heritage French in grades 9 and 10. And Wilton High School is coming home tonight with 7 total medals. So in addition to the 2 gold, students also picked up 3 silver and 4, well, more than 7. 3 silver and 4 bronze. Right? Some simple math. It's been a long day. We've done a lot of celebrating. So 9 total. Excellent. So there is some breaking news for us. I think in continuing tonight's theme of the Good News and Celebration edition, and certainly John contributed to this, but I'd also like to recognize our entire music department for earning the recent distinction of being a NAM Foundation 2018 Best Community for Music Education. Wilton was one of, I think, just 16 communities here in the state to earn this prestigious recognition. The Best Communities for Music Education designation is awarded to districts that demonstrate outstanding achievement in efforts to provide music access and education to all students. To qualify for the Best Communities designation, Wilton answered detailed questions about funding, graduation requirements, music class participation, instructional time, facilities, support for the music program, and community music making programs. Responses were then verified with school officials and reviewed by the Music Research Institute at the University of Kansas. So a rigorous process for sure, and our folks are absolutely deserving, so we're really proud to have earned that recognition, and hats off to our music department.
That's great.
I'd also like to congratulate one of our Wilton High School students, Peter Iorfino, for recently being selected as a delegate to the Connecticut Youth Forum. This is a week-long experience sponsored by the Connecticut Youth Leadership Project, during which selected students come together to develop a community action project. Students initiate the project during the forum week and then continue the project after the forum. Upon completion, students become eligible for one of several scholarships offered by the Connecticut Youth Leadership Project. So we want to congratulate Peter for that recognition. We also have another student, Jessica Highland, who was a recipient of the Alibis Peter Bloomer Citizenship Award. Jessica was selected by a panel of the Alibis staff and board members for her leadership, participation, and commitment to the special needs community. Alibis established the Peter Bloomer Citizenship Award in 1988 to recognize students who demonstrate a high level of sensitivity towards individuals with special needs. So we want to congratulate Jessica as well. Last week, Don and I and Dr. O'Donnell had the pleasure to induct 13 juniors into the National Honor Society. They join, one we know, Julia was inducted last week. They joined 34 other members of the class of 2019 and 72 seniors who are current members of the National Honor Society. Ms. Stedham shared that the class of 2018 has the largest membership in memory. So what a recognition for that class, and congratulations to Julia and her fellow classmates and the class of 2019 as well. Also, just a reminder, the high school science department is hosting with the PTSA a parent coffee on Thursday, May 3rd at 7 o'clock in the Little Theater. They'll be discussing the science curriculum and the state's recent adoption of the next generation science standards. I understand that Mr. Matt Hoyt will be leading participants through a phenomenon-based NGSS activity similar to those developed and implemented by the biology department. So we'll have to see what that's about. And then last but not least, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to our PTAs and our PTSA for hosting 2 recent parent conversations. Both were held yesterday, and we had about 30 participants in total. Conversation topics ranged from the calendar to the curriculum, and I think it was beneficial for all who were able to attend. It's my intention to plan follow-up conversations. Chuck, Andre, and I will also be forming a roadshow where people can have time with the 3 of us together, and I think we'll plan these at each of the buildings, and my hope is also to invite some teachers. I think that's one of those areas that we need to work on in bringing parents and teachers together in a different way, just to have some conversation around instruction, curriculum, and life at school. So stand by for that as we move forward.
Great. Committee reports. Business ops?
Nothing, we haven't met, so nothing.
Okay. Anything from you, Debbie?
No.
Okay, all right. One moment. Glenn, you have
Well, let's go
cause.
through that, and I want to ask something, I want to make a comment about something later. Okay, so we'll go through the committee reports, and I'm going to,
Okay.
okay.
Laura, teaching learning, Laura?
Nothing to report from teaching and learning. I had a meeting, but nothing significant to bring to the table here. But I did want to mention, in addition to the teaching and learning, Laura and I participate in some of the curriculum review steering committees. And I had the opportunity to attend the World Language Curriculum Review Committee meeting that was held on the 19th, which updated everybody as to where we were in the process. And I just want to remind people that this is a steering committee that kind of sets the objectives for the curriculum review, and it's made up of the leaders in that particular instructional field, and quite a few teachers are all part of it. So they're all involved with the process of setting objectives and curriculum needs and updates and so forth. So it's a very involvement-driven type of process led by Dr. Smith. And one positive thing that I heard at this last meeting I wanted to mention was there was a little discussion around Ken Denage, who was the humanities coach at the high school. Somebody mentioned he was part of the steering committee, but then Scott Weber, or one of the other leaders, was talking about how they have positively worked with Ken as the humanities coach in the world language department, and how it has really helped to build a bridge between English and humanities in the world language curriculum. So I just wanted to share some positive feedback about how our coaching program is helping and working positively at the high school. So that was good. And then tomorrow, I think it is, our next meeting of the physical education health curriculum review. Again, attended by mostly gym teachers and health teachers, all part of it. So that's been a great experience to be part of these curriculum reviews.
Great, thank you. Laura, did you take that?
You're welcome.
Okay. Policy, we have the revised hate conduct policy on for discuss and approve tonight. And we met earlier this week. We have a couple things we'll be bringing to you in the coming weeks. The Nutrition Committee, under Chuck's guidance, is meeting next week to discuss state mandated changes to the policy that we just passed a couple of months ago.
And revised months before that.
So we'll be in tune with, touch over that. Glenn, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I want to go back to your Hall of Fame commentary, and I think it's just, it's wonderful. I'm thrilled. I would like to propose that in addition, you mentioned that we were going to put a plaque outside the little theater for John in some way, that we officially change or add his name to the Wilton High School Jazz Symposium, and going forward call it in his honor, in John Rhodes Wilton High School Jazz Symposium.
Well, that's actually something that's come up, but I think that's going to be handled at the building level.
Okay, fine, whatever. I just want to make sure that happens. I think he certainly warrants that. It was his baby. He gave birth to it. We're now, I think this year was our 42nd year. Okay?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And it's just, if you have not been, it is a great night, afternoon and night. It is just fantastic. That effort spawned similar efforts in Norwalk High School. Norwalk, they have a jazz symposium night, but none of them compare to ours.
Oh, yeah.
So it's, so anyway, I would like to make sure that happens, and that the name officially, his name be added to that recognition, somehow, to the jazz symposium, so he gets that recognition. Okay.
Thank you. Review and discuss long-range planning.
Excellent. So before we get into that, I omitted one important celebration.
Oh, yes.
I emailed all of you at the end of last week
Yes.
that our Dr. Chuck Smith was recognized as Administrator of the Year by the Connecticut Reading Association. That's a big deal.
That's a big deal. Congratulations. Yeah. Well deserved. It's because of your leadership of the Nutrition Committee.
Because there's a lot of words in the nutrition policy. So we've been discussing in various fora the work around long-range planning for some time. I mean, we had a conversation, I think, as long ago as at the end of last summer. So it's taken some months of planning to really pull thoughts together and to map out what we hope to do and when we hope to do it and with whom. So I included in the agenda packet a draft agenda really for discussion purposes tonight. My hope here is to bring a very broad-based group of folks from across the community together for the purpose of reviewing and discussing our vision, our strategic objectives, looking at our progress forward, and then building on that work and developing kind of the next roadmap for 5 to 8 years out. When I first started here in Wilton, as part of my entry plan, I hosted a number of listening sessions across the district. Chuck started a year before me and did the same thing. And so, we worked together doing visioning work, but it was with separate groups across the district. We really didn't, at the time, take the opportunity to bring people together kind of under a single tent, so to speak. And as I've been reflecting on that over this last year, I think the time is ripe to reconvene that long-range planning group, to bring a whole bunch of different folks together, and to look at where we want to go and where we are now, and then either reconfirm our present commitments or change them if that's the group's will. So does that make sense in terms of process? My understanding too is, there is a rich history around long-range planning here in the Wilton Public Schools. And so I think folks, as they learn of it, especially folks that have been around for a while, will have a context for this kind of work. And I think our teachers and administrators, certainly as they participate and share that work with their colleagues, will also find it, pretty beneficial.
I think it certainly ties into, the effort that we're making to put together a 5-year financial plan, because there will be things that come out of that long-range plan that are going to have an impact or affect our financial plan. You can't do one without the other. It's hard to put a financial plan together not knowing what, we're going to try and do and accomplish. So the two have to be, synchronized and
Naturally.
And the impact's measured. So it makes all the sense in the world to do it. I mean, we can do 5-year numbers just based upon where we are today and what it looks like, but not knowing what our objectives are going to be, is kind of impossible. Doesn't make it work well. So.
I have a couple of questions. One is, what do you envision the size of the group being, and how many different constituent groups are there?
Many.
And then what's the interface with the Board of Ed?
Sure. So the first round of invitations will be to the Board of Ed, because it would be my desire to have all of you, or as many as available, participate. So in answer to your first question, I'm imagining, as I started to generate a list, anywhere from 90 to 100. So a really broad-based group. And that, as we talked about the logistics of managing a group that size, that's going to be a worthy challenge. So what I'm imagining is, in addition to all of you as board members, the administration, other faculty and staff representation from our schools, PTA representations, students as appropriate. We also have a long list of community groups who I think would desire to participate. So I was imagining representatives from the Selectmen, the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, certainly WEF, League of Women Voters, Kiwanis, Rotary, YMCA, Wilton Library. It's a long list.
Yeah, I stopped writing.
Yes, so I'll send it to you. And I would just qualify that it's probably not a complete list. And again, this is, my own kind of personal reflection and experience here in the nearly 4 years now that I've been serving in this role. What I've come to see is that, in every corner of this community, we find people who have a stake in our schools. I hear it all the time. It's certainly in recent months, particularly around budget conversations. People move here for the schools, and we hear that everywhere. And I think this is one opportunity, as cumbersome as it can be with that size, to recognize but to celebrate, that shared value. So I'm going to have some good help, but I think we can manage a group of that size. I'm imagining the way that we'll organize it is really by schools, and so we'll have table groups by level, and then I'm going to call on my administrative colleagues really to serve as table captains to facilitate conversations, record notes, do the kind of logistical information gathering as we unfold conversations.
And then just one more question.
Please,
Will there
no.
be like an end product or an end report or an end presentation or an end recommendation? How will that work?
Yeah, so I think all of the above. And what I was envisioning is, over the course of probably 3 gatherings, 2 this year, and then a 3rd in the fall, what we would generate is, for lack of a better term, what I would call a roadmap, where we would, I think, beginning with the vision, agree, the aspirations that are contained in that document, are they still our aspirations today? And then that would be one of the artifacts that we would validate. Similarly, the strategic objectives that we've proposed, are those still, do we still see those as the high-level strategies that we want to employ in order to, move forward and achieve our vision? That would become another artifact. And then the next would really be a work plan. And I think the way that we have crafted it previously with kind of a broad, kind of 5-year roadmap, and then shorter term work plans, and is within that, some of the routine work that we're already engaged in terms of academic achievement. But I have to imagine climate achievement, things like that, but there'll certainly be others that generate organically through the process, and all of that will be, committed to paper. And then we would use this form at the board table, as well as, periodic gatherings moving forward, to revisit and assess the progress.
Thanks.
I think it's a terrific plan. As I've said a couple times during the budget process, the key to success with the budget is, comes down to a shared vision. And it's not enough for just us as a board to share a vision or the administration to share a vision, but it's the vision for the schools that belongs to the whole community. So the more that we could do this type of work, engaging the community and talking about where we're going in our schools, the better, and it'll serve us very well. So kudos to you to taking up this project.
Anyone else? Anything else? Okay.
Great, so we'll be beginning to send out invitations tomorrow.
And is that May 21st?
These are the
date?
dates that I'm proposing. The first one, they're Mondays, and so this is, the blessing and the curse of spring.
Right.
Is the calendar, both, in and around the schools, but across the town, is just jam-packed. So I tried to find days where we didn't have other commitments, or there were a minimal number of commitments. So what we landed on were 2 Mondays, May 21st, and then June 11th. And you can see from the draft agenda there, that first meeting will really be organizational. We'll lead folks through some conversation around the current vision, strategic objectives, our own assessment of progress around that, and then re-engage in some visioning work using a protocol, or maybe a modified version of the protocol that we've used in the past. And then in the subsequent meeting, we'll review some of that, and then engage in a SWOT type analysis to really, try to assess the environment and get a sense of the groundwork in which we'll be planning. And then we'll gather all that information, working with the administrators over the summer. I think we'll rely on them to craft a roadmap document that we'll then bring back in either September, early October, to this long-range planning team for acceptance and validation and questions, and then we go forward from there.
Great.
Great.
Review and discuss tri-state consultancy report.
Okay, so for those of you who are in the viewing audience who don't know what Tri-State is, it's an alliance of about 45 high-performing school districts in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut that kind of support each other through the process of continuous improvement. And they do that in a number of ways. They provide a lot of professional learning, but their major focus is on conducting visits to the member school districts, where they engage in a pretty in-depth analysis of either a curriculum, a program, or an initiative using an assessment model that they have. They have, I think, about 8 pretty hefty indicators that they evaluate the district against. So Wilton has not had a visit for quite some time. I think the last one was in 2012. We were scheduled for one, but at their recommendation, because Kevin and I were new, we've delayed it. So we're scheduled for one next year, a full visit. And because we haven't done it before, and because, although I've been on visits, I've never hosted one, and Kevin hasn't either, they thought it would be a good idea to do a kind of a mini visit this year to kind of test the waters and give us some practice and get some feedback on some aspects of what we're doing. So this past November, we had that pre-visit. We had about 10 people here, a superintendent from East and Reading Region 9, 2 principals, one from Darien and one from Reading, 4 assistant superintendents, Briarcliff Manor, Bronxville, Chappaqua, and Edgemont, and a retired superintendent from Bronxville. And then we had Marty Brooks, who is a retired superintendent and is currently the executive director of the Tri-State, and Kathleen Wiley, who's their director of training, who led the visit. And so we picked ELA as our focus area. And the reason we did that was because, let me try to get my years correct here. Next year, we will have completed the first full cycle of all of our curriculum reviews. And the following year, we'll begin again in 1920. And the first one that will be up will be English Language Arts. So we thought it would be a good idea next year to have Tri-State come in and do a full visit, a full assessment of the English Language Arts program. So that information will be available for the group of people who conduct the review in 1920. Okay? 1920, I think.
Oh, the year 19/20.
20. Yes, I'm
But
sorry.
you're calling it 19, never mind.
I do that occasionally. 2019, 2020.
Got it.
Okay. All right. So all Tri-State visits are framed by what are known as essential questions. And those are basically questions that we pose to the visiting team for them to explore around the subject that we're looking at. And our two essential questions were, to what extent does our teaching of reading and writing reflect a comprehensive, rigorous, and integrated approach? And secondly, to what extent have we actualized aspects of our ELA program philosophy? So Laura and Lori know that the establishment of a program philosophy is a very important part of all of the curriculum review processes. So we asked them to look at 4 aspects: student engagement in and passion for reading and writing, ongoing assessment of student performance to promote learning, instructional decision-making that fosters student growth and independence, and a productive partnership between home and school. And those happen to dovetail very nicely with the criteria that Tri-State uses to assess a school district. So the way they conduct this is that they visit us for 3 days and they engage in various activities. So we collect a lot of artifacts for them to look at. Things like, like the program philosophy, meeting agendas, the actual units of instruction, documentation of the professional learning that the staff have gone through, and things like that. But they also go to each of the schools and to central office where they conduct interviews with stakeholders, and they also conduct focus groups, at each of the buildings with students, teachers, and administrators. And so I think you all received a copy of the report. It's pretty extensive, but there's, I'd like to just share with you their summary findings. So I'm going to quote them. The district has developed a framework for teaching English language arts that encompasses high expectations for students in a sequential, developmentally sound manner. The approach supports active student engagement through a variety of methods that meet expectations of rigor, comprehensiveness, and integration. At this point in the district's journey, the sustained effort to carry out the core principles of practice for English language arts has led to universal awareness, extensive implementation at grades pre-K through 8, a critical mass of support, and positive impact on student outcomes. This picture is entirely consistent with what one would expect at this stage of the improvement process. The Tri-State team believes these shifts will take root and ripen over time. Yes, the district will need to experiment with creative uses of time, ongoing professional learning activities, and the use of instructional coaches. But today's mechanical applications will eventually become part of teachers' muscle memory. Students' capacity to apply close reading strategies to unfamiliar texts and their use of more powerful writing techniques are likely to have a cumulative effect, raising the bar and expanding the possibilities for the teachers they get tomorrow. I love that quote. This Tri-State visit concludes that the school community should feel validated and rewarded by the work that has already taken place, the renewed sense of progress, energy, and movement, and the promise of things to come. Our sense is that the district is well poised for its next level of work and for its visit in 2018-19. So we found that to be very affirming of the work that we've already done. And they did make some suggestions for our next level of work, some of which are already underway, some of which I think we all need to have a discussion about how to address. So the first 3 are things that we've already started to work on, and the first one is to develop a systematic set of performance assessments. So we have actually trained through Tri-State teams at each of the building, but it's only one team, and they're the only ones actually implementing performance assessments. So our next level of work would be to make that something that is more ubiquitous throughout the schools. All teachers should be using high-quality performance assessments in English language arts. And so that is on our strategic improvement plan. We made a conscious decision to push pause on that because teachers were feeling overwhelmed, but that is something that we need to now revisit and start again. They also recommended that we calibrate the progression of skills across grade levels. And so what that means is we need to have discussions about what is the level of work we expect at each grade level. And is each teacher across the grade level expecting that same level of work? Is it building upon what they had learned in the prior grade level? And are they setting students up for success for the work that will be expected in the following grade level? And that's work that we have begun. In particular, we did some really good work this year at Cider Mill around that, right? And so that's something that we have to continue to grow within each school and then across schools. And I want to say that's not something that you ever stop doing. That has to be ongoing work. Teachers need to constantly think about what level of work is appropriate for this grade level, and is it in line with what comes before and what comes after. The other recommendation was to expand mechanisms for gathering student feedback. Now, that is something that we've started. If you recall, I think I shared with you at the end of last year that we're doing a voluntary pilot as part of the teacher evaluation process. And for those teachers who are participating in the voluntary pilot, student feedback is a required part of that. And in some of our schools, I think Cider Mill, upwards of 50% of our students are, 50% of our teachers are participating in the voluntary pilot. And so I anticipate that as teachers experience the success and the benefit of getting student feedback, that that's something that will grow over time. Now, there are three things that I think we need to talk about what we're going to be doing next. The first is to address the abruptness of the transition between schools. In reading that report, it was very clear that our parents and teachers feel that the transition between second and third, fifth and sixth, and eighth and ninth is too abrupt for some of our students. You know, I personally hear a lot about the homework requirements that change from school to school, the level of support students receive, and just the general work requirements. And so we need to think about maybe preparing students a little bit better for that transition so that they're more successful. We need to engage in greater communication with parents. I think the Tri-State found that parents very much appreciate the love of reading we are able to instill in the students, but they need to understand better how the particular frameworks that we use lead to that. So they like what they see in their kids, but they're not quite clear about how what we do leads to that endpoint. So that's something we need to work on. And the final was to address the variation across schools in administrative commitment and engagement in this work. So that's something we'll also need to work on. And so we have several members of the Tri-State Steering Committee out there in the audience. Both Jen, Lauren, and Don are there. Would you like to add anything? Sure. Jen will always add.
Yeah. First, I think this was a huge celebration. I think that this is a great document and a great group of professionals represented on this team. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to work with the Tri-State Committee, it's a think tank, and I had an opportunity to participate in a visit to Weston, and really got to experience the level of commitment and then expertise, and it's just a wonderful experience. So I think that I feel very proud of the work when, if you look on page 5, there's just up at the top, when they took away kind of what our desired change was. I think when you look at what resonated with them is exactly what we are trying to change. It talks to our strategic plan first. And then the second part is that we believe in the professional capital of our teachers. And I think the fact that that was a huge takeaway for what we want, that's a huge celebration. I mean, when you see the amount of documents that is gone through, it is like, so that was what came across to them as our desired outcome. I think that's a huge celebration. The second thing is when you think about stages of implementation, when I think about the elementary schools and the amount of commitment that our teachers have at the elementary level. But what was such a wonderful surprise was the implementation that was seen after just a short time in our middle school. And that is not an easy change for anybody who's ever worked in a middle school. I have firsthand experience of that, and I think that that's a huge compliment to the work going on at Middlebrook, and that's another wonderful celebration.
You know, if I could just add to that, we've actually had people now come and visit
Yeah.
the middle school to see the work that they're doing, because that particular team recognized how challenging it can be to implement something like this at the middle school, and they've come to showcase it, which is really
nice. And
nice.
so I think that was just a wonderful recognition for implementation. But the thing that I think is most important, when you get down to levels of implementation, there's a section on page 7 that goes into the top of page 8. And it talks about obviously we're doing all of this for impact, right? And so when you think about impact and assessment, I think that the first page, when you get to the bottom of 7, and it talks about the authentic experiences and the unbelievable engagement that is demonstrated when they spend significant amount of time in our classrooms, we know we're on the right track, right? So we had people from all over, the tri-state area who have a wealth of background and expertise watching our students engaged in rigorous thinking, rigorous meaningful work that they were engaged in, they were excited. And, one of the things that when you get into the second paragraph, I think it's a twofold question. Number one, there are indicators that we know, levels of accountability with the SBAC assessments and our MAP assessments, and we don't see the impact that we feel we should be seeing on those types of standardized assessments. So that's a concern. And why, when we're watching them do this amazing work, is it not transferring into the scores? And I think that that's something we really need to talk about. But it begs another question, because yes, we have these standardized accountability scores, but there's a second part. The fact that our students are engaged in authentic, meaningful work. Are we measuring and gathering information that gets to everything we think is important? And I think that as a district, we have some serious considerations around this particular topic, because at all times, sometimes those accountability scores with the SBAC and the MAP don't show the whole picture of what's going on in the classroom. And I think that this report really highlights our need to talk about what else we value and what else we feel is important and how we're going to measure that, to make sure that we can really experience and celebrate what is going on in our classrooms. And so I really am excited next year to really take that thread and really explore that a little more. Don't know how we're going to do that, but
Well, I think the answer is really those performance assessments.
right. So anyway, it was a wonderful experience, and looking forward to next year.
Anything else?
It was truly very affirming. I think that Wilton educators push themselves for excellence in their practice all of the time, and I think they have a tremendous, we have a very experienced faculty at Middlebrook, and they hold themselves to a very high standard, and they can be very hard on themselves, especially as they go through a transition period. And I think that the feedback that we got at the Middlebrook level, because it is so new, was tremendously affirming. I was talking to some staff members today about the importance of really taking the time to honor the importance of the successes that they're having. I think they push themselves, and sometimes it's helpful to have a fresh set of eyes tell us just how wonderful the work is. And similar to a lot of what Dr. Mitchell said, in terms of the kids are really engaged in the work of the discipline, and they're able to take the skills and strategies that they're learning and apply them in novel tasks, which is not only good for performance on high stakes testing, it's good for success in life in general. So I think it was a very strong indicator that A, a lot of wonderful work is happening both at the student and the teacher level, and B, there's a lot to celebrate even though we still have work to do.
Did you share the report with teachers?
I'm actually going out to each of the schools and sharing the report and giving them an opportunity to ask me some questions and talk about what the next steps are. So we have those scheduled very soon.
And then as far as the high school goes, the visiting team in the report did spend a lot of time celebrating, I think, the intellect and the scholarship and the talent, the dedication of the faculty and the achievement of our students. And then went on to challenge us as well, to challenge us to continue exposing kids to high levels of text and important literary texts, but to also find a way to work in more student choice about what they're reading and empower them to be part of the dialogue about what they're reading and why. And then also challenged us to continue trying to find ways to implement active learning and performance-based learning beyond what we're already doing. So I think it's exciting because the report recognizes a foundation of excellence in our faculty and our students. But the good thing about Tri-State is they set the bar high, and that's very good. And you know, the challenges in the report, I think we're capable of meeting, and I think we're excited to engage with.
So our visit will be next February,
How long does the visit usually last?
3 days.
3 days.
So, may I?
Please.
Okay. It was interesting, as I read the report, and I've read through it like 3 times now. It seems as though at Solder Mill, at Middle Driscoll, and at Middlebrook, we're on track. I mean, you read the report, we're there. They could not have been more complimentary, more excited about what we're doing and how we're doing it. The high school was an outlier, as I read the report, in many ways. And Don, to your comment about giving students choice, maybe I read it incorrectly, but the teachers pushed back on that significantly at the high school. Said, no, we know what we need. We're teaching what we've always taught, etc. And that bothers me a little bit. The high school really, in this report, was an outlier, that they haven't bought in to what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. And it may change as the kids today that are at, Middle Driscoll and Solder Mill come through the high school. Maybe that it'll affect a change, but I was concerned by that. So the high school teachers seem to just dig their heels in. We know what we're doing. We knew we've always done it this way, and we're going to keep doing it this way. Yes?
I think that's what was said in the report.
Yeah.
I have to say, from my perspective, the high school has really moved a great deal.
Okay.
I mean, we have really had some great conversations. That I've seen some really nice work at the high school. I really
Okay,
have.
because I didn't get that from reading the
Well,
report.
here's the thing. We have this a little bit at Middlebrook as well. There's a desire to keep the whole class novel, the kind of canon of work.
Mhm.
And I don't disagree that that's important. I think we need to figure out how and when to do that the best way.
Okay.
And I'm
Yeah.
feeling that we're making progress at the high school. I mean, I think in general, secondary is a little bit
Different.
harder to move,
Yeah, no,
just
no
being
doubt about it.
honest.
Yeah, no, I
And
understand that.
We've tried very hard to be respectful of the beliefs and values of the people at the high school. But I have
Yeah.
to say, they have not been resistant to some
Okay.
of the things that we've
Okay.
asked them to do.
No, but
I-
Glenn's point is an important one. I mean, what you're picking up on a dynamic in the report, but it's not as stark as it's currently hitting you. I think
Okay.
that to map it out really accurately, there are a lot of people who have come to love literature and believe in it as a force for developing empathy and compassion and understanding and intellect, and they think that's to be protected. And out of that can come a sense of a roadmap for what should be read to reach those ideals.
Mhm.
But there's also understanding that all those standards can be gotten at with various texts. And we have a lot of practitioners who understand that too.
Mhm.
So I don't think we have a shared vision yet about how to go about that, but I think we have plenty of room for good conversation and no one who will say anything fatalistic. Like, I will never consider this conversation, or I will not be part of this conversation to decide how we're going to determine guided choice for our students, so that we get at important learning standards and important literary constructs without saying it's got to be just with this book or just with this canon.
Yeah.
So we're not facing a medieval canonical mindset, but we haven't yet reached the point where everyone agrees on how to map out the guided choice. But we have really good support and really good blueprints in this report, and I think that we're going to move in a good direction.
Yeah, I mean, that was just my takeaway from reading the report. And it goes back to the comments I made repeatedly, and will always continue to make it, is about allowing the students to find their passions, identify their passions, and follow their passions. Which is, for me, is a critical responsibility we have. And when we just kind of draw a line in the sand, no, you can't read that, or we're not gonna read that, we're not gonna teach it, we're doing this because we've always done this, that bothers me. Okay, so, but yeah, listen, as you all know, math is a thing that it bothers me greatly, but there's nothing more important than learning how to read.
I mean,
Nothing.
I will say, just because I've had the opportunity to work in a K-12 environment, the term workshop
Yeah.
consistently is looked at very differently from the secondary level.
Right.
And I think what we even need to do, we don't just do workshop even at the elementary school.
Yeah.
That's one part of it. It's a comprehensive literacy program
Right.
that really follow the core principles that are outlined in the
Yes.
philosophy. So I think we have to be really careful next at the visit to switch our language from, we just use workshop too flippantly, I think.
Yes.
And I think that if we
It may be,
switch
yeah.
to looking at those core principles, which are embedded in comprehensive literacy and absolutely up at the high school, I think we might have a little bit of a different take on
Yes.
it, because that was created as a K-12 thing, and that's one of the things I was thinking about going
Right.
forward into next
I
year.
do think the high school teachers, when you bring up workshop, they're a little taken
It is
aback.
going to be,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I purposely don't push that at the high school. And again, my interactions, I mean, for instance, we have a consultant, Heather Rocco. They've done wonderful work with Heather, and when I go into the classrooms, it is very student-centered.
Okay, great. I mean, because that's not the takeaway that I have.
Yeah.
The other, oh, good.
I just, to go on your point, and others, I like the way that, Don, you framed it as there are some challenges and we're gonna work together on them.
Right.
And the term, workshop or whatever can have different connotations at different grade levels. And I think the important thing that I have gleaned from your report tonight, Chuck, and your comments, is that you really want to work with the teachers, because the high school teachers know what they're doing
Yes.
in terms of preparing students for the next step. Wilton has always had a great reputation for preparing kids for high-level reading, and I know you still continue to hear graduates who come back and say, oh my gosh, I can't be more prepared in writing. So all of that is wonderful. So I do think it's a matter of trying to listen to each other and have the teachers at the high school understand, no, it's not exactly what it looks like at the elementary school.
Right.
But to Glenn's point, the idea of choice and more engagement and a little bit more of this, that, and the other. And I don't mean to be flippant, those are important, all those are important points. But as long as it's teacher understood and the teacher input is there, and that's what I'm hearing that you're moving
Yes.
towards. So I really think that this is basically a very affirming document.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
really
no,
do.
there's no doubt
I think
about
it's
it.
great.
Yeah.
And then, the stage is set to say, okay, so let's talk about, where some of the rubs are and what makes sense looking forward and what makes sense in Middlebrook, and then how we make it kind of the Wilton way in the high school so we can continue the good and increase it. Not like scrap something and try to
Oh, yeah.
convert people. That's really not the point. And so I just think that it's just healthier to have that dialogue going on both ways, and I'm hearing that tonight. So I'm just really heartened, in addition to reading the report and realizing that there's been a lot of foundational work and a lot of good stuff, and talking specifically about all the sort of the rigor at, I think it was Cider Mill, that they're seeing, as just sort of struck them. And then I do think the other point, and that's to Jen's point, is that when we look at our test scores next fall, and we do need to lay them out and we do need to talk about them, but will there be a disconnect? And if so, what assessments are we using? And performance assessment is one thing, that's for sure. But, like it or not, the public accountability outside that we're measured against, is some of that more standardized testing. And that itself was supposed to be capturing student important work. So what's the disconnect? So we may have to have some really interesting conversations next fall. So I look forward to that. So thank you.
The only other thing, and Chuck, you commented on, was the parent involvement, parent engagement. And I'm wondering, you know, we have an incredible, and this is at the, you know, kindergarten through, you know, 5th grade or 6th grade level. We have an incredibly wonderful children's library here.
Yes.
And is there any coordination that we do, or is there anything that we communicate to them? I just think we could probably help some of that, because if you go there on a Saturday, it's filled with parents and kids. To communicate to the library personnel where we are, what we're doing, what our focus is by grade level, so they can help guide also and help communicate. You know, and I think that's something that would be very important for us to do, try to figure out how to do that. How do you communicate to the staff? Because we've got, I mean, it's a great staff in the children's library.
I know the head of the library actually was one of the members of the curriculum review committee for ELA.
Yeah.
And I believe that
Fran
Fran,
and the, I'm blanking on the name.
yeah, I can't remember her name either.
They have formed a wonderful partnership, Fran Compar.
Yeah.
And they have been doing an amazing amount of planning with summer reading, integrating kind of
Okay.
school to library
Right,
partnerships
okay,
during
yeah.
the year.
We need to really make sure that
Yeah.
happens, and that.
It's a great resource
Yeah.
and trying to capitalize on it.
They're a great staff, because that's where, on the weekend, that's where the parents are with the kids, getting books. And if they're not getting the right books, or getting the books that we're kind of, what we're trying to focus on, and it would be a shame not to coordinate,
Absolutely.
you know, those efforts if there's a way of doing that.
Well, they always
Yeah.
used to. I mean,
Yeah.
the children's librarians always talk to Sergeant Mel and Mel Driscoll.
Yeah, and we need
And
to
they,
kind
they
of
came to
reach
the
out.
read aloud, they came to the Wilton Education
Yeah.
Foundation read aloud this
Yeah.
morning. They were there, yeah.
So, yeah, just to continue to do that, and that's where the parent connection can be strengthened in terms
Yes.
of what we're doing.
Anything else?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, congratulations. I mean, I personally found the report really superb. You know, we hear through the course of the months bits and pieces, but just to see it all presented like that, and just to hear respected outsiders from outside the district, you know, superintendents and principals from our neighboring districts come and just affirm that we're on the right path. And you're just, like you said, coming here to show other people what we're doing. You know, congratulations to everyone on all the great work that's taking place. So thank you for that. And if I can go back to my chairman's report, I think I gave wrong credit for Read Aloud Day. It was Wilton Education Foundation. So big thank you to the Wilton Education Foundation and the Miller PTA. So.
And the village market.
I did thank the village market.
You can't thank them
Worth
enough.
repeating.
I
That's right.
can't thank them enough.
And just, they always used to also, I assume they still do, donate copies of the books
They
to
do.
the
They did.
To the Wilton Library as well
Yeah.
as the school.
Oh, okay. Should we thank them again, everybody again?
Yeah, please do.
Just thank you. It was just a really
And
wonderful.
thank you to everyone who read.
Yeah, all the volunteers.
Debbie and
We have
Kevin.
half the police force
Half
there.
Oh,
Right?
yeah?
It's incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Right.
The financial report.
Well, it's very hard to follow what everyone's saying, all these great things, and I'm coming up with the financial report. So I'll thank the administrators though, because as you know, we've had a freeze in place. So it's been
Yeah.
difficult to get through that as we go through it. And as I know, each month as we go through, we try to free up funds that, what your priorities are that you said you need, so as those months go along. And what I should really point out to the public is that when you're looking at our financial report and you look at our variance, it looks like we have a $1.4 million deficit. And what the public may not always understand is the fact that we have to have unbudgeted amounts for our SPED program that we cannot budget for. So we will always go over every year, and that is completely normal for every school district. And how that is evened out is the fact that we get state funding to offset that you do not see in this books. So we watch that each month to see the level of funding that's coming in versus the SPED expenditures that aren't allowed to be budgeted. So that's why we came in, we looked at the freeze at the beginning of this year because we were concerned about where those levels were going. And we've had some savings. As I mentioned before, OPEB has been a savings for us. That came in lower. We had some custodial movements that actually have resulted in some savings to offset. And then we had other expenditures that they weren't in the budget that, for whatever reason, software contracts, different things that weren't in there that are now in there. So I still feel that we're on a good track to come in at the end of the year the way we expect it. And with 2 months left for the year, as we keep an eye on the expenditures and moving forward on the SPED, we should be able to free up so some of the other priorities that we have on there will be met. And we want to make sure that what the administrators have given us we'll make sure we can get those. So the business district office has been really great with monitoring this every single time a request has come in to make sure that we free it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, moving on to action items. Discuss and approve the recommended budget with reductions, which will incorporate the $500,000 we were instructed to remove from the budget by the Board of Finance.
Great. So I sent to you last week just the collective thinking of our district administration. As I noted to you, we try to adhere to some guidelines around decision-making so we can follow a coherent process. So some of those, for example, are, to protect anything that would ensure the health and safety of students, ensure that we're matching resources to the best extent possible with core beliefs, vision, strategic objectives, attempt to minimize impact on students, attempt to minimize impact on staff to the best extent possible, prioritize areas to maintain investments, continue to find efficiencies, and I think you see some evidence of that in some of these proposals. Ensure that we're in compliance with state and federal mandates, ensure that we're meeting the mandated curriculum, and that any proposed programming reductions or eliminations are based on analysis tied to student outcomes. Consider opportunities to increase revenue, and then this year we want to protect operating capital because it was actually so slim already. So those are some of the principles we try to adopt as we're looking again at every corner of our budget. And so we're proposing, that the $500,000 come from a range of different lines, including with, beginning with a staffing reduction of 2.0. So as you know, the deferral of the ELL teacher that we had proposed, and lots of conversation while this is an area of concern. We think that we can manage with our current levels of staffing. We may be able to augment that with some additional contracted services. And as I noted to you, if we had built into the budget an additional salary, should we need to open another classroom if we experience a spike in enrollment at Cider Mill as we did last year. We didn't want to leave ourselves vulnerable again. So if that spike doesn't materialize, then we'll have funds available to hire that teacher this summer. The second staffing position is the one computer technician position. There's consensus that we can do this and continue to manage the high level of support that we're providing. We've been in the process working with CCAT and Eric Hawkinson of shifting this model anyway, whereas for many years we had one building tech assigned to an individual building. Eric is working on a plan to bring them out of the buildings and using our ticketing system, really creating a deployment process where they can work together to respond to the various tickets that come through. I think the other shift that we're experiencing, which is also impacting the need for services, we're moving away from loads and loads of desktop computers everywhere to more mobile devices. And so those are managed differently. So the needs that are in the buildings are actually different. So we feel comfortable with that reduction as well, and that would come through a retirement. We're paring back some professional learning plans. Some of this is coming out of Andrea's budget, so she's reprioritizing. She's also gone back to look at the IDEA grant and thinks that she can use some of the funds that are there to reprioritize to make sure that we get our most critical professional learning needs met. We've made some revisions in the contracted services line. And then we've gone through all of those other kind of non-instructional operational areas. So we were able to revise the expenditure around electricity usage. Thank you to the solar panels that are now on 2 of our schools. As we've talked about before, we've had, knock on wood, everybody, healthy staff. And so we've been able to revise downward our projection for medical benefits expenditures. Similarly, we were able to slightly adjust the workers' compensation line. We found a $14,000 adjustment in one of our sped salary lines, and then the three remaining were a slight downward adjustment in our two legal fee accounts, and then we were able to adjust up our anticipated preschool revenue. So all of those various lines combined to meet the $500,000 reduction.
Anne, you're comfortable with the reductions in medical benefits?
I am. With the medical alone, as you know, the allocation rate changes per your history, and as each month goes on, it's getting better. We experienced that on the town side where we were up significantly, and we were able to actually, as the couple, just even 2 months went by, it dropped for us to be able to change. So we had the same situation here where between some staffing changes and our claims rating, same with workers' comp, the rates from the Board of Ed side have been really, really good. So those are coming down, and also the fact that we came in with a 0 increase this year, which is, I haven't seen one in the couple of years I've been here that they've kept it flat for us. So I'm very comfortable with these.
Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the English language, situation. Not cutting that position. We talked long and hard about it, about having. I'm just wondering, perhaps there's some way, or someone could explore. It's such a unique thing. I would think there's got to be some grant money somewhere for doing that, because it is not. It's outside the norm of teaching. That somewhere, somehow, somebody has got to have grant money available to do that.
You're talking about the ELL teacher?
The ELL teacher.
But it's not unique to Will, I mean, every.
Well, no, but it's unique. It's not. It's out of the normal teaching environment.
Right.
Out of the norm of teaching, not unique to Wilton. But there perhaps there's a grant money somewhere available to. I don't know.
Receive a very small amount of grant money through the state. It covers materials. I think it's like $1,200.
Yeah.
I'm not aware
Oh,
of.
yeah.
I'm not aware of.
And I'm not either. I'm just wondering if there's some way to explore that perhaps, because it's such a unique situation that maybe there is. I don't know, but
It's unique for us, it's certainly not unique in, a lot of other, urban centers and,
No,
high
it is.
concentration of
Yeah,
planning.
I know.
It's a required service.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I'm not even sure grant money would
Well, I think
fund
it just
something that's
shows that
required.
these are hard choices.
Yes.
$500,000 is a lot of money
Yeah.
to have lost from our budget. It's not as bad as the $650 that was originally cut, so we're grateful for that. But these are hard choices.
Yeah, and I appreciate, struggling to come up with this kind of a list
Yeah.
that keeps the impact away from
Classroom.
the classroom and programs, with the exception of the ELL teacher. I think we're all sort of holding our breath on that a little bit.
Yeah.
We muddled through this year. Maybe we won't need the contingency teacher next year, so, there's that little safety net, but let's hope that will work. I think it's great that the computer technician, because the model is such, I think that's a fair thing. Obviously, being able to find increased enrollment in preschool to help bring in some revenue is wonderful. You've heard me question a little bit about, can we deal with the legal fees? That's always a little bit of white knuckles. But I do remember in the budget process, however, that we did already reduce professional learning and contracted services. And I guess I wanted to focus just a minute on the special services budget, because we've heard your desire to kind of change and go to some new models and some new strategies that we don't want to sort of get held up with and be, worried that we're moving too slowly. So will this impact that, or can you work around it, or is it something that we just have to live with?
We'll be able to continue on with our strategic, the issues that we want to address. We're going to address working with students with challenging behaviors in the social and emotional realm. We'll be continuing to address high-quality reading instruction for children with dyslexia. And we'll continue to work with our students across the pre-K through 21 continuum in addressing the unique needs of students with more complex disabilities. Those things will continue. But, it will be a challenge to, you know, we've got some real work to do as a community to look at our continuum of services. And unless and until we really invest in our internal to the district continuum of services, the line that's going to be the most vulnerable is that out-of-district tuition line. And so that's, when we take away professional learning, that's some of the work that won't get done as quickly.
Right, and I think it's important that this board, we recognize that. This is a budget reduction. We wouldn't have put it in the first place if we didn't need it. And there has to be, there will be some consequence of reducing the budget. So if we get impatient, or if we wish some things could move more quickly, or if we wish we could bring down certain expense lines, you know, by bringing things in-house, it may not happen as fast. And that's just reality, and I just think we need to recognize that, that's all. So, but I do appreciate, Kevin, within the parameters, that you did the best possible, so thank you for that.
Anyone else?
And the revised numbers will be the numbers you present Monday night, or was it Tuesday night?
Tuesday night at
Tuesday
7:30 in the
Yeah,
Teen Center.
Tuesday, yeah, okay.
Is there a motion to approve the recommended budget with reductions? Second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you for that. Discuss and approve policy 0524, hate-based conduct.
Great, so you've seen this policy before. We had a good discussion about it, I think, 2 meetings ago. Per Debbie's feedback, we revised the language in the policy to read, and it's the second to last paragraph on the second page. So we revised that first statement to read, students who engage in hate-based conduct shall be subject to intervention ranging from school counseling and education support and restorative justice opportunities to school discipline up to and including expulsion in accordance with Board Policy 5114. And I thought that was a really astute recommendation, and the committee certainly endorsed it as well, to make sure that, you know, we are focusing on not just handing out consequences, but, you know, educating students as well around this topic. So thank you for the recommendation.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that policy is approved. Thank you.
Congratulations, a good policy.
Yeah, that's a great, unique to Wilton policy. At this point, are there any, we'll go to comments from the public. Is there anyone in the public who would like to come forward?
Of course, you know, I'm going to say thanks.
The floor is yours.
I'm Susan Graybill. I live on New Canaan Road. I have a folder for you because I didn't know if you had already received the official Hall of Fame application. And if you have, well, then you can just file this. But it has the application, the list of people who wanted to support the letter requesting that John be honored that way. And also, the policies require 3 additional official letters, and so that's put in there to try to make it together, put it all together. And because I didn't know where the Hall of Fame was, I went down and went to the Clone Center today, and I found the alleyway, which looks really nice. But before I did that, at home, I'm not an artist, but I tried to sketch out what it might look like.
Oh, good.
And so it's very nicely done. But I'm giving this to you all to hand out to that committee.
Thank you.
To add to what all they need for that, okay? And if you want something to add, you have your art teachers already here. And sometimes if you need, and you've already said this, I did find, pardon me, let me sit down like I'm supposed to, just a second. I did find this in your board policy where it identifies how the plaques would be ordered, et cetera, and that's excellent. And you might not need that diagram that I drew because I just found this tonight. But this is good. And so then the next question, and I know you won't be able to answer it, but this is concerns. Do I have to do anything? Don't answer it. just know, it's okay. I have to fit into the board guidelines. Do I need to do anything to continue what you all have already set into place? I'm so grateful that you have 4 people that you're adding to the Hall of Fame, because with 4 people plus Chip, you're going to have 5 people on that wall, and it will begin to look like a Hall of Fame. Right now, you don't even notice it. It looks like decoration, so this will be good. Then, do you take time to notify these people? I mean, you'll take care of that? Okay. And then, I know the McDonald's said that they would pay for Chip Gall's plaque, and Fralix are going to take care of John's. And of course, with the list of people who are willing to support, if it costs $1,000, we'll all chip in and help them. We don't expect 2 people to pay for $1,000. But anyway, do you tell us what we have to do in order to pay for that? Because otherwise, I'll just keep coming and asking you, and you don't want to see me here every time. So what are the next steps for paying for the plaques, getting it taken care of, and who do we go see, that sort of thing? You'll do that. You'll let us know, okay. And then, hang on just a second. Oh, do I need to, well, you won't tell me this, but I will ask Bob O'Donnell if we need to do anything to further the conversation about the symposium. You had mentioned that in an email. I think that's a great idea. From Glenn, yeah, it's a great idea to name that symposium after him, because that really is there because of him. So will you tell me if I need to do something to make it happen before I die? Okay? You see what I mean? I mean, when I'm gone, I can't make you listen to me and come and say. So thank you very much. I appreciate your support for John.
Thank you.
And also, I like the fact that when you're doing these review things for the curriculum, that you are deliberately including teacher involvement and input. You know, that's my big mantra, and so I'll be watching, okay, to make sure it happens, because teachers are our best resource, really. Well, you know, I'm telling you where I'm going. Well, I am, because our teachers are the best, and they are a prized resource that we haven't used enough. Okay, that's enough. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public like to come forward? Seeing no one, is there a motion to adjourn?
Well, before we do that, I just want to remind people how important it is to be at the meeting Tuesday night. There was a great section today on Good Morning Wilson's website where she really went through in great detail. Last year, we barely got by defeating the motions to reduce our budget. It was done by a voice vote, and there are those in the community who say, you know, the nays won instead of, or the 8, whatever it was, and the budget should have been reduced. This year, they're going to do it differently. People who can vote will have a colored card given to them, and guests will be seated separately from those who are eligible to vote, and they will actually, if there is a motion made to reduce the budget, there will be a physical count of the votes, a pure, true count. And so it is critical that if you believe in us, you believe in our students, you believe in our faculty, our system, that you come out and make your presence known and be prepared to vote in support of this budget. It's critical, because it would not take many people, and they are an active group, to come make a motion to reduce the budget, and that motion carries that night. It's too late then when the vote afterwards. That motion can be made that night, and our budget can be cut.
That's an important point. A
can be
lot
cut
of people
that
think,
night.
well, I'm not gonna go to the town meeting, I'll just vote on
Exactly.
Saturday.
Right.
The motion made from the floor at the town meeting will be voted on by the people sitting in those seats.
Right.
So if a majority of people vote to cut our budget Tuesday night, our budget gets cut. And as you just saw from the discussion we had about how we absorbed the cut we already took, these are serious reductions we're making in our budget. So I'd really like to make that point. It's really important to attend the meeting on Tuesday. Babysitting will be available. Just, you know, please, it's important.
It's critical that you show up and be prepared to vote on Tuesday if there is a movement afoot to reduce our budget. It's critical, so.
Okay, anything else? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.